Hi, this is Josh Apter from Manhattan Edit Workshop, welcoming you to Sight, Sound, and Story Live, making it work from cinematographer to colorist. These are a series of events that we've been doing. We were just talking about this before we started, out of necessity, basically, before we were doing live events. And then after COVID, we started doing online events, and we just kept doing them. And it's been a terrific success for us and for viewers who are really watching and tuning in from all over the place, who wouldn't normally even be able to make it to a local event in New York City. So we're happy to be offering it, and we're going to keep doing it. We like talking about all kinds of different things that are more about the craft and the ideas behind the concept. As a school, we often teach a lot of the technical, which obviously, when your paintbrush is a keyboard, it's a means to an end, but it's always great to put that aside and really just talk about some of the conceptual work and the art behind the the art, I guess. The art behind the art. There you go. I couldn't have said it worse. So I'm going to stop talking. Let me thank our sponsors, AJA, OWC, American Cinema Editors, and I want to welcome Zeiss as a technology sponsor as well. I always thank Mike Valinsky, who helps us to drum up sponsorship. Without him, we couldn't do any of that work very easily. And you make it look easy. Just like Janet Dalton and Jason Banky, who are behind the scenes, making it all happen. So all I have to do is pop on my Zoom and try to look somewhat presentable here. So without further ado, I'm going to throw it to our moderator, Patrick Inhofer. He's a longtime colorist, an old friend and co-founder of mixinglight.com. And he's going to be speaking with Edu Grau and Roman Hankewycz, who are going to talk about their collaboration on Rebecca Hall's directorial debut, Passing. So without any further introduction, I invite you guys on to keep going while I disappear. So welcome to the show, guys. All you have to do is enable your video. There you go. All right, guys, you have a great conversation. I'm going to bow out, and I'll be listening in and hopefully learning a lot, and I'll see you later on.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Josh. My name is Patrick Inhofer. I'll be moderating our discussion today. And I do really want to thank Manhattan Edit Workshop and Josh and Janet and the rest of the team. I go way back with Josh and Manhattan Edit Workshop. We were co-board directors with the Final Cut Pro, the New York Final Cut Pro user group. And so for me, this is kind of coming back home again a little bit. And so thank you very much. And I'm going to switch to my other camera here so I can see Roman and Edu as we begin our discussion on Past, which was just released to the world last night on Netflix. And I have managed to watch most of the film. No, not all of it, but I did manage to get through most of the film. I got a real feel for the texture and tempo and the themes and the subject matter, although we're going to be focusing mostly on, the production side, post-production, and the challenges that were presented therein. So thank you, Edu and Roman, for joining us today. And I think the way we'll start real quick, because I know everyone always wants to know whenever I participate in events like this, is how did you get started in this business? What got you to the point where you're sitting here talking with me about a film that has gotten this worldwide release, streaming on Netflix? It's gotten all sorts of amazing press. I'll start with you, Edu. Edu or Edu?
Edu, yeah.
Edu,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So I'll start with you, Edu, and ask you kind of like, if you just give us a quick summary of how you got into this business and what got you here.
I think it's a lot of different things, but I think it's everyday passion for what I do, what got me here, and love to what I do. And it's a lot of I wanted to study film when I was 13. After I started a film school in Barcelona when I was 18. Did 4 years of SCAC there, the film school. And then I moved to London to do a master's in cinematography at an FPS, and it's been an ongoing learning process since then. It's like never stops. And it's like Yeah, I mean, I got my first movie when I was 23. That movie, shot with mini DVs, end up in Cannes in a film festival, and then I had my big break when Tom Ford saw my shitty little grainy poetic uh, real, and he said he wanted me to do a single man. So and that changed my life. And so it's been an ongoing process. And I now live in the States, live in LA, and try to live the dream.
It sounds like you are living the dream. And let me ask you real quick before we move on to Roman. So you started with mini DV. We've come a long way since then. And we'll talk a little bit about camera in a couple of minutes. But you were very steeped in film school. And I wonder, when you have youngsters come up to you today as a DP, specifically as a cinematographer, literally trained in the craft, do you have a position on the value of film school versus just pull out your iPhone, make movies, get into the business, right?
I mean, it's obviously the times are changing, and there are things that you couldn't do then. You couldn't shoot a movie. That every movie when I started was shot on 35, or
Yep.
16 maybe. You couldn't shoot then, and you had to know a lot to record something that was presentable. Whereas now, obviously you can shoot a movie on an iPhone if you want, but I always really respect film schools, and I always kind of I'm a big fan of film schools. I spent 6, if not 7 years of my life in film schools, and I'm still teaching there. And because I still think that it's like there is a process to filmmaking. There is a camaraderie and a teamwork that is very difficult to learn alone. Obviously you don't have to go to film school to be good, not at all. But it is a learning experience. It is an experience. It is the experience you get by shooting, by collaborating with other people, and it's a community center. Film school is a community center where everyone has a similar passion, and everyone gets together, and everyone is at the same time doing something. So it does help. And I think it's a beautiful process to be from school. So I do defend it a lot, because I think it's a very good way of coming up, and learning the craft of filmmaking.
Well, and that's what it is. It's a craft, right? And there's no better way of learning a craft than from craftsmen, and from being able to share your ideas with people who are going through the same thing as you. So yeah, I'm kind of with you on there. I think there's a lot of value. I think there's a lot of opportunity for youngsters today, just with their phone. Tell stories, freaking tell stories. Don't let that hold you back. But at the same time, if you have that opportunity to do it, then I'm with you on that. I think I would encourage people to do that as well. Roman, so you are a colorist. And can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing now, and kind of how you got to where you are now, kind of what your, a couple quick words, what your path was?
Sure. I'm a colorist at Harbor Picture Company. I've been here for around 10 years. About 15 years ago, I started my professional path in post-production, which started in New York, in the Times Square edit houses. Started as a tech. I worked at a dub house, kind of like was leaning towards editorial, and was learning from editors, and thought that was my path for a bit. But then I found out I'm not very good at I don't have that innate ability to sort of keep the entire story in my head and rework it into new and creative ways to sort of like connect with the audience. So I gave that up and really dove into the picture part of it, which I've always loved. So I went into online editing, loved that, and transitioned into focusing on color. And that's been, I don't know, like a 10-year journey. At Harbor Picture Company, I met Joe Gawler, who's been he's been my mentor, taught me a lot, trained my eye, hooked me up with Edu. Edu did a film with Joe a few years ago. That's when I met him. And the rest is history. I mean, it's living the dream.
Well, let me ask you, Roman, the transition from editorial into color, and that was my story. That's been my journey as well. And I'm curious, what kind of, was that at Harbor where that happened, and what kind of software platforms were you working on, and what are you working on today?
Yeah, no, that did not happen at Harbor. I think for me, the transition was online editing was really the fulcrum, because that sort of combined the editorial training that I had gotten to that point with this new element, which was color correction. And you know, I was color correcting things in Final Cut Pro and in Avid Symphony. You know, I was doing that clicking business, and you know, just despite how tedious it was, I'm like, this is what I really like doing. And I just knew that I wanted to shift my path a little bit away from the editorial side and just fully into color. And then that's about the time that Apple Color came out, which really allowed me to sort of like, you know, get my own stuff. I did not come up under like a big color house. You know, I didn't have that benefit of mentorship in the color sense. So I'd been doing my own thing for a while before I met Joe, and that was really sort of the guy who lent his knowledge to me.
And one last question before we roll the trailer and we start talking about this film. So now today at Harbor, are you guys a Bakelite house, DaVinci Resolve, Symphony? What's kind of the main platform you're doing your grading in?
Yeah, so I'm currently working in Resolve solely, but we do have colorists that work in Bakelite. Yeah, it's all available here. So.
And Edu, did you have a preference one way or the other when you were thinking about the finishing side of this and the color side of this? Do you think about the software platform? I want to be on DaVinci Resolve, or I want to be on Bakelite, or are you just thinking about, I want to work with someone who I trust, and I'll let them figure that out?
Exactly. No, I don't. You know, both platforms are, or all the platforms can be good as far as you have the person that can manage them. You know, and they can. You know, they all have different things, but I don't see the difference. I only see good graders and bad graders. You know what I mean? Good graders and slow ones. You know, I was very clear that I wanted to do, you know, put live grain into the picture, you know, so it's also that was, you know, sometimes the grain can change from one to the other. But I already knew we were gonna use live grain on this, you know, so it was good what we did, you know.
Yeah, and I've got some questions about grain that we'll be getting to in a moment. Let's start now, Jason. If you want to get ready for that, we're going to roll in the trailer for this film, just to get everyone up to speed in case you're not familiar or haven't seen the trailer yet, just to get us all in the right headspace.
Pardon me, I don't mean to stare, but I think I know you.
Claire? I'm trying to find out the history of the blonde you've brought along.
She's a girl from Chicago I used to know.
Princess from Chicago.
Things aren't always what they seem.
I'll be damned. Lots of people pass all the time.
It's easy for a Negro to pass for white. I'm not sure it'd be so simple for a white person to pass for color.
So you haven't ever thought to?
What?
You ever thought of passing?
No, why should I? I have everything I've ever wanted.
This is my husband, John Bellew.
Does he?
No?
You dislike Negroes, Mr. Bellew?
No, not at all. I hate them.
Isn't she extraordinarily beautiful?
I suppose.
Your life. It's perfect.
Have you ever thought of what you'd do if John found out?
I do what I want more than anything right now. I come up here to live. With you.
You think they'd be satisfied being white?
Who's satisfied being anything?
We're all of us passing for something or other. Aren't we?
So I'll start with you, Edu, because you know, you watch down the trailer and it clearly has a very striking visual presence, right? I mean, number one, we're black and white. Number two, the aspect ratio. And number three, the relationship, you know, the juxtaposition of some of these shots, especially in the trailer, where, you know, the difference between, you know, the grayscale values, right? The tonality of the different scenes and then how they cut together. When you were first approached to lens this film, what were you thinking? You knew that, I know from reading the press releases or the press that's been done on this, that Rebecca, the director, had in her mind, she wanted this to be black and white. It needed to do that. It needed to be evocative of the time in which it was sent. So when this came into your hands, what was your thinking about what you needed to do to get the director what she wanted emotionally and visually out of the story?
So yes, I mean, on our first chat about the film, she said that she was only gonna do this movie in black and white and 4:3. You know, there was no other option, and she fought very hard, and it took her a long time to get it accepted by producers. You know, they all wanted, some of them wanted to do it for more money, but in color, and she was like, no. She was stuck in the black and white 4:3 idea, which is amazing as a cinematographer, you know, to be given a project like this. You know, it's a dream. You know, it's such a beautiful technique to play with that it's just a joy. You know, but also here it was like it's a different level than any other films I've done, because here the black and white and the 4:3, you like all those things are not only, you know, coming from a visual standpoint, which obviously it also helps, but they're all coming from the storytelling, how important it is, you know, the difference between white and black in this movie and all the grades in between. This is part of this, the structure and the narrative of the film, you know. So it's a miracle when you're given a movie where the visual standpoints are so important relatively to the story, you know, and so connected to the characters. So for me, you know, I felt very blessed and honored to be offered this movie, but also, you know, I knew that I had to step up and I had to do something that, first of all, I've never done before. You know, because I've never shot black and white, I've never shot 4:3, but also we didn't want to do the usual thing. We also watched a lot of old school movies, and we also watched the new contemporary 4:3 black and white movies. like Ida or Cold War or even The Lighthouse or, Roma is not 4:3, but all those, And we also thought, oh, we need to do something different. How do we change? And one of the concepts was to play with the lenses, and after heavy testing, we were a bit disappointed with the spherical lenses, which kind of make sense, or like they are inevitably the ones you first think when you're shooting black and white. But we also realized that a lot of the movies recently were shot black and white, were shot as spherical, and suddenly we're like, what if we try anamorphic lenses? So we're looking, and Rebecca was very adamant at it. She wanted a very painterly quality in the movie. She wanted, a very kind of distorted way of seeing the world, kind of a dreamy aspect to it, that you didn't know if you were in a reality, a painting, or a movie, and playing with it. So we just tested the low anamorphic lenses, and they were just like, when we saw them at Harvard on the test day, just like our eyes suddenly illuminated, and it was like, wow, we felt that excitement of those lenses, of something that we hadn't seen before. We hadn't, been able to, it was not copying something or redoing something that was done. It was creating something totally different from anything else. And so it blew our minds, and we just like, well, let's go with it. But it came with implications, of course. It's like suddenly you are getting the whole chip of the image, getting it anamorphic, and then you are chopping the sides. So you are effectively not using, the 3.2K of the Alexa. You are actually now using 1.7K, which is to their standards, it's blasphemy, or it's like something, it's like everyone is obsessed with that stupid number that the 4K means. Again, we're thinking about the number, not thinking about the result. If you look at it on a big screen, it's utterly different and beautiful to see something that is not what you are used to, and a lot of the films look the same nowadays. You look at they all feel very similar, and suddenly that just move us away from any other thing that we know or we've seen before. So it was it was a great big step in the direction that that Rebecca dreamed or thought about and was talking about the movie. We found this ethereal, kind of dreamy quality, kind of painterly, impressionistic, and those lenses, the depth of field, the way the background kind of fades and kind of decomposes in a way sometimes, and how it reacts to the whites, how it reacts to the blackness. It's like it's an interesting effect, and we we fell in love. And again, when you're passionate about something, you just don't care about the 4K. You just look at the image and it's like, this is something different. This is something special. Let's go with it. And we're lucky enough that we didn't have a big production, like a big studio, big streamer behind us, and we could do whatever we want with obviously the obvious and essential collaboration of the director, Rebecca, and the producers, that they were all up for it. They were a bit scared at first, like so were we. But at the same time, that's how you produce good things, is by being a bit scared and a bit nervous, but also stepping up and going for it, and being brave.
Well, now, not to cut you off, but I loved when I was reading the trades. I loved where you mentioned that essentially we have a 1.6K image that we're working with in this age of obsession over 4K and 8K, right? That one of the ways to evoke get that kind of nostalgic time period sense was to reduce the quality a little bit. Did you finish in like a 2K or a 4K workflow, or like what was your finishing workflow?
Yes,
Or maybe
indeed.
Roman knows the answer to that.
Go, Roman, you explain.
The post guy. No,
Yeah.
yes, we did finish in 4K for
You did?
like
Okay.
delivery. So everything was scaled up to
Scaled up.
size.
And that's what I love. And it's interesting because there's been a lot of talk recently amongst that. I've been listening on podcasts with DPs and whatnot about how we're kind of like a peak camera. Like now it's a question of, it's not, can we get the image we want out of these cameras? It's can we craft the image the way we want to craft it, irregardless of the technology. And I think that's what you've accomplished here, and what you've achieved here is you've kind of thrown away some of those technological achievements in order for you to give the look and feel that you want out of the image.
Exactly. At the end of the day, it's amazing that you can do all those things and have 4K and 8K and whatever, but it's the most important is to tell a story with images, to convey, the vision of a director, to do an image that it hits you somewhere, somehow, so, I see all those obsessions for 4Ks, and I'm like, you know what, I mean, I'm not into it. I'm just bored of most of the images I see, and most of what I see everywhere. I'm just like, we're obsessed with the number, not with the result of it.
Did you have to integrate with VFX? Were there like some VFX shots that had to happen, or was this all mostly in camera?
No. There's a lot of VFX in the movie, a lot of removal and so on. And, and it's the same, it's the same when I shot a 16, movie on 16 millimeters, it's like, they are like, oh yeah, we would love to have more resolution to be able to do stuff. But at the same time, the final result doesn't have that resolution. So you have less to work with, but your level that you need to reach is also not the same. So it kind of evens out. I mean, there's a lot, I heard both ways. But when I did Suffragette, the post-production guy was telling me, I'm happy, with the 16 mil resolution to do what I do. I don't need more. All this, talk about needing a lot more resolution to do VFX. It's like, if the final look is that, why do you need much more? I get, some of it, but sometimes it's over. They overdoing it. They just claim a bit too much, like, more resolution. And there's something to say as well, like it's good that there are different images. It's good that everyone can tell the story in a different way. It's good that that we're not going in the same path, because it can get a bit boring, and part of our joy as director and cinematographers is adapting to as color graders, is adapting to every look, to every story,
And Edu, I'm going to get back to the camera in a moment, but because it sounds like you used an Alexa, and I'm going to ask you a specific question about your camera choice. But Roman, so the finishing workflow, as we're talking about the Ks in this, so in the finishing workflow, when you set up your Resolve project, kind of how were you getting those camera images in? Was the 4K output like just a, on the final delivery, you just spit it out 4K up-resing it, but you were working in a lower resolution in Resolve, or how did you manage that?
I believe what we did was we set up our timeline 2:43 to be the resolution of the aspect ratio of like the image area. Everything was scaled to match the editorial, and then on output, to do a 4K, it may have been bumped up to the appropriate resolution with padding to fill that area.
And were you surprised when you saw the final outputs after you'd gone through your entire color grade and you do the final? Did you have to kind of circle back on some of your choices? Because you found that maybe there might have been some artifacts or something introduced as you did that upscale and you needed to maybe soften a window or something like that?
No, actually, we were working in 4K. When we projected, we were viewing in 4K. So
okay, good.
The project, the timeline resolution is what I'm not sure about. But what we were projecting when we were working was at the highest, at the 4K res. So all of our choices were being done looking at it in its final form, which is the most important thing.
And what I find really interesting hearing that answer is you were projecting. So you were working in a grading theater as opposed to looking at like an OLED or something like that. You were projecting as you were making your choices.
Yeah, we did, the traditional theatrical pass, broadcast pass, whole thing.
And what was your first pass though, that initial grade?
Yeah, the thing is also, like, we have to remember that this movie was shot just before the pandemic. So all the post-production, we were in the middle of it, in the middle of a pandemic, so like we kind of also adapt to the new, technology, or the adapted technology of iPads and for grading. So we graded quite a lot of it on iPads before we could go. I could go, for example, to see it on the big screen. It was not. So we did a few days on the iPad, then we go to the big screen. More days on the iPad, a few days on the big screen.
It was
So wait, Roman. So were you grading in the theater, and then Edu is giving you notes based off of the iPad export?
So this was
he was looking.
This was a completely new situation. We were all trying to figure it out, and we had a solution for grading remotely, which utilized iPads, which allowed us to do some of the legwork that way, but also by way of changing output resolutions and our output transforms, we could also then flip everything we've done to look at it projected. So it really allowed us to do some work remotely, getting notes and working live, actually, not just like I'll do some stuff, send you a link to review, but actually we would work live over.
Oh, so Edu was watching live as you were working, and so you're streaming to him live to his remote iPad, which kind of has become basically a standard for a lot of colorists and cinematographers these days.
Yeah, it was
fantastic. So the thing I wonder about though, Edu, especially for you, is so you're doing these and you're kind of watching Roman's work on an iPad. Roman may have been grading on a projector, which has a very different visual impact than watching an iPad. When you got to the cinema to the grading theater to watch, were you surprised between what you saw on the iPad and then what you saw and what you experienced in the grading theater?
The surprise was that I was not surprised. Like I was like, the iPad actually, the way they set it up, and we were watching. I was in LA, Roman was in New York, and the way it looked pretty bang on of what I was seeing. The big surprise was the size. That's the biggest change. Like it looked the blacks and the whites look, but obviously you cannot tell the grain on an iPad. You cannot tell sometimes the sharpness on an iPad. So like obviously sometimes of the composition it just feels different when you see it on the big screen. So that was the biggest surprise, like the size of it. But it was pretty accurate, and I'm very happy in a way that the pandemic taught us a different way of grading and the possibility of grading remotely. I think it's like moving forward it's a no-brainer. It's amazing. Obviously being together in a room it's also sometimes where the magic can happen. But in terms of a schedule and possibilities, it's great. The chance of being away in a different city at a different time zone and still being able to watch a very accurate representation of your film that you without being in the theater. So that was really great.
Yeah.
So Jason, in a moment we're gonna cue up Tea Time, the first roll-in from the film. But while we wait for Jason to get that ready, Roman, so during this process, you're doing this remote grading, and then Edu is going to come in and he's going to do an approval at various points. Were you worried about what would happen when Edu walked in and what his reaction would be? Were you worried about this process, or had you seen this in action before and you were fairly confident?
Harbor spent a lot of time, our color science team, vetting this process, and I had already played with this process on other projects. So I knew that there was a good track record for this. People had been pleased to see work on like an iPad remotely and then come in and the translation was good. I think you're always worried. Every project has different sensibilities, and what on one project might not be an issue, on another project can absolutely ruin things. So that and every filmmaker has different sensitivities, so different tolerances. So I'm always worried.
Yeah.
That being said, I had the benefit of being able to look at it on a broadcast monitor projected, and I'm able to sort of bounce around between these different display formats, and I was confident that things were translating quite well. But I think, like Edu says, once you see it big, there's a million things you want to, your decision making changes a little bit. So I knew that there was still going to be tons of work to do.
So this is the first scene of their encounter between the two main characters, and it's at the beginning of the movie, which happens in New York in the summertime. And Rebecca was very clear that she wanted these first scenes of the movie, to feel like a different world compared to the rest of the movie. She wanted them to be very bright, and a level of brightness that sometimes will be almost unbearable, and so bright, that I've never done something as bright in my whole life, So it was kind of beautiful to be able to play with that amount of light and that amount of brightness, and also because it was also helping to tell the story. We obviously know that Tessa and Ruth are mixed race actresses, from her previous work, but here we are kind of, it's so bright that probably, it's not that easy to recognize them as African American or mixed race, and that was kind of part of the point of the movie. It was a kind of interesting to play with that level of brightness, that level of, of exposure, So, it was important for us to kind of go to the maximum brightness we could, but we still had to, while grading it, still had to maintain some elements that will transport throughout the film, so we try to keep a little bit of black in there, a little bit, to keep the whites at the maximum, but and then use them a little bit of white later on, so it's it's, I love this scene. I love how it plays out, and I love the way kind of we get in Tessa's world, and Tessa's kind of cautiously discovery of the surrounding white world, how she wants to kind of hide from it, and she uses the hat to kind of disguise herself from the world, and suddenly she sees her curiosity stops, or gets in hand, on that person she's looking, that that she's strikingly white, and that's the beginning of the story. And it was like such a white scene, that is also kind of, it's kind of starts the movie in a way, in a tone, in a musical note that is completely different where it's gonna go. So I'm always interested in that, exploring, and I remember when we were first grading it with Roman, and Rebecca saw it. She came a bit later or something, and she saw it, and she was like, "Wow, this is really white." And she never, she'd seen the rashes and they were not as white, and suddenly she was like very, and I was like, yeah, maybe it's too much, maybe I've gone to, and she was like, no, it's perfect, but it's like, it was like she was even surprised herself how wide we went, how overexposed we went, and that was kind of an interesting. It was not as white on the rashes, and we went pretty crazy, on the grade with Roman.
So Roman, about that, I mean, when that first scene comes up, and I always have questions when I talk to colorists about what do you grade first? Do you like going through and selecting selected hero shots? Do you like to just start at shot number one and work your way through the timeline? But I got to think that when you got the film into your hands and you're kind of watching it down that first time, was it obvious just from the raw dailies that you were getting, the raw image, that that's the direction that they wanted to go in?
This concept of the beginning of the film being very bright and then having this transition was a surprise to me. So when we, when I did my first pass, it's just to go through and become familiar with everything, and not try to do anything too committed, because you never know exactly what the tastes of the filmmakers is until you're all together. So obviously not trying to overcommit, but Edu was like, we got to go brighter, and I'm like, okay, how about this? And he's like, we got to go much brighter. And I mean, it took me a while to get used to that. It's when you have one vision in your head and you start transitioning into something outside of that, you have to get used to it. And now when I look back on it, I'm like, I can't imagine it any other way. But I remember our experience, getting into that scene when you were teaching me that level of brightness that we wanted there. I was like, oh, okay, we're going for it. Here we go. And it was what Rebecca
and Edu, when you were on set, how were you visualizing this image? I know that you chose to record in color. So there are kind of two questions. One, why not go with one of the monochromatic sensors? Like Red has a couple monochromatic sensors out there. Did you consider that? Was that part of your camera testing? And two, when you were on set, especially on that scene, Did you do any kind of pre-viz grading where you were kind of, show me that LUT that I like that has those highlights pushed up so I get a sense of it? Was there any of that going on, or you just kind of knew in your head, no, I'm going to protect, make sure I don't blow anything out, and then we'll deal with it in the grade?
Well, it's both. You kind of adapt to like to what you get, also what you like. Like and Rebecca was saying, I want it very bright. I want it very bright. And it's like, yeah, well, and then and we did it quite bright. There's quite a lot of light. We wanted it quite summery, and it's quite bright overall. But always felt like when watching the first edits and the rushes, it's like, yeah, but it doesn't have a punch. It does, it's not striking enough, and there is something, I don't know, sometimes, you just need to follow your gut feeling and just like, listen a bit more inside you. And that was when we went on the first color day, we just like push it as much until your heart starts hurting, you know what I mean? And it goes there. I always try with also graders, I would just say, just do it as much as it, before it explodes, just like with darkness, with brightness, with, like, just like, it's like, oh, we all tend to do like 2 points. No, just go crazy, So
Yeah.
it was a bit like this, and it was also like listening to what Rebecca was saying, like that we had to go bold, and we had to go very white at the beginning, and that would make the whole movie change the perspective of its own, of itself, and that's what I did. But I was also kind of proud when she saw it, and she was very kind of shocked, because it's like, okay, I've shocked her, that's good, that's whiter than she even thought of it, so it was kind of like, yeah, that's but at the same time, we also, there was some beauty to it, and because of the the way the highlights react with these lenses, and the way we protect them on the day, on the shoot, makes them that they are not like burning. They have like kind of, there's a lot of shades of white, like it feels like, that thing of the Eskimos, like
Yeah, the Eskimos with they have names for like 30 different shades of snow, right?
exactly.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I feel like it's a bit like that. There's a lot of levels of brightness, and obviously there's something that is burned, but it's not a lot. It's only like some touches, So it was a bit like, we explored those limits that I have never done before, and and it's something that it doesn't get you done a lot,
So
in cinema.
when you were exposing for skin tones, though, were you putting a lot more light on their skin on set than you normally would have on a traditional, when that you just want a more of a traditional narrative? Or?
I was, but it was also a matter of exposure, and I think you also, like, on set on the day, I was not as and as brave and as committed and as knowledgeable in of what the movie needed. I was not. I didn't wrap my head around enough. So we did it a lot on the grade. We push it a lot from the rushes to the final. It's quite substantial, the change, in a good way. That's what great is as well. The movie evolves. The you evolve. And the movie sometimes needs something else by the time you are grading than what you should.
Yeah.
And that's what we did. So like we push it more and more, and I was braver on the grade than I was probably on the shoot. So that was important, but you also have to be bold and stick to that. And when I see it right now, and it depends on each monitor you see it can be like, whoa, sometimes even too much. It can very, very easily go wrong, this look. But
Yeah.
I know that people who watch it in a proper cinema, on a proper TV, on a proper projector at home, they will also appreciate, that level of, darkness and or brightness and boldness of it, because it encapsulates something that is essential to the movie and the storytelling.
Roman, did you find that when you were exploring this look and creating this look and really just, Edu's like, go, 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 that you had to do extra work to protect those highlights, to keep them from just flaring out into just sheets of pure white, that there were things you had to do in this grade that you don't typically have to do when it comes to managing, especially, I mean, those skin tones in those opening scenes there, because it's the tea room, but they're also, the scene in the shop, and like this kind of look it goes through a couple different scenes, and I couldn't help but imagine what was going through your head as you were managing those highlights off the skin tones into the highlights of the background elements, and kind of the work you had to do to keep that from just turning into a sea of flatness.
Right. And there's a lot of white also, like some of the clothing is white. So there were elements in the frame that were susceptible to getting clipped. So it wasn't anything that crazy, but I did have to make sure that there was a good shoulder to that curve, so that things sort of like trended bright, but they never like folded over into getting clipped. So even though it starts getting super bright and maybe milking out, but you're never sort of like losing definition up there.
And did you have special challenges on shot matching? I can imagine that you get the wide shot exactly how you want it, and then you cut to like a reverse angle, and you're like, oh no, now I got to rework this whole thing all over again because I'm pushing the edge,
Yeah, for sure. And there were many windows also, because I think what we discovered is like, you want to create this feeling of brightness and lightness and whiteness, but also like too much of that is flat and not appealing to look at. So we were always trying to create a little bit of contrast somewhere, whether it was like the plants in the corner of the frame, make sure that those maintain their density so that you had a reference point. So the whiteness in the room was weighted down by something. And a lot of windows here and there, just to make sure that everything kind of worked together. It was many passes of just finding things to improve and hone, and
Well, and that is the key to the look. I mean, as I was watching it, I was really impressed, because you're right, that simultaneous contrast exists in that image, and to people watching this, as you watch this film down, especially in these throughout the entire film, watch what's happening in the shadows, right? Because there's a lot of work going on those shadows for the opening sequences, where it really helps pop those highlights. Exactly. And then later in the film, and we'll take a look at some of those scenes where, there's a lot of detail in that shadow being managed as well. So, it looked like you were really managing both ends of that spectrum very, very precisely.
True. Thank you.
Yeah. And also coming back to your first question about the camera, it's also when it came handy as well. For example, I'm not a huge fan of red cameras in general, obviously each project is its own, but like, the monochromatic camera, it didn't seem like no one was totally, happy with it, so it didn't make a lot of sense to shoot in black and white, in a black and white camera. Whereas it made a lot of sense to shoot in a color camera and then turn it black and white, because you could use, for example, in this first scene that we've seen, you could use the green of the plants and take it to a level of darkness that you could not do if you could not. It was a lot easier basically to select green on that image, and all the plants will get selected, and then you just crash them the black, and so it was like we end up shooting with the normal Alexa Mini, not the monochrome one either, so
and that's interesting too. And that's interesting too for people who are watching who might not be familiar. I mean, one of the great techniques when you go to black and white and you're shooting color, I mean, everyone just wants to turn down the saturation, but really the beauty and in my experience, the opportunity when you shoot color and you're delivering black and white is the ability to take those color channels and change their relationships, and it changes the way the highlights and the midtones and the shadows all kind of interact, and what gets accentuated and what gets dropped down. And so, Roman, were you finding yourself doing quite a bit of that to come up the looks for the scenes? Sure. Yeah. So, Jason, let's go ahead.
Yeah. For example, I don't know. Yeah, I'm thinking like, for example, what we did a lot, we painted the main room, the main house, we painted it red, but a very striking, ugly red. Not only to make sure that the movie will never be seen in color, because we hated it. but also,
I'm going to poison this pill. There's no way.
Exactly. But also, so we could select the color, and so the walls of the main house were painted red, and you could select the color of the red, and they would be like, and then you could control the dark level of darkness or brightness of that color, and that came in handy quite a few times, actually. Yeah.
And that's brilliant. And in fact, it's one of the questions I prepared for you, which was, did you find yourself, back in the days of classic black and white photography, the stories abound of how, if you looked at the makeup in real life, they didn't look like people. They had these weird skin tones, and because all about making the image look right in black and white, not in color. So were you finding, obviously you just told us about painting the room red. Were there other things you did, like maybe with lights and gels, and where you knew you wanted to do that on purpose?
Yeah, sometimes it also happened that we will be doing color match, like basically using HMIs and the same scene with tungsten light, and it looked kind of ugly in color and in real, but that's the lights we had, and the most powerful light is an HMI, so let's use it. Oh, we need a light that looks better on the skin tone, so let's use the tungsten, so we'll be color, kind of mismatching, a scene, and it will look horrible in color, but will also come in handy on the day, because you will select the backlight that was blue. You could select it very easily and then just minimize it or extend it, so it was it came in handy here and there. And also I did test a few filters, just putting a red filter, but it was mainly working on the sky more than other stuff, so. But it's also it's also fascinating to train your eye to the black and white. It's a whole different technique and a whole different world, and our eye sees in color, so training to see it in black and white is not that easy. So sometimes we kind of change our iPhones. There's a way of putting it all in black and white when you do triple click. So I, for the 2 months I was shooting the movie, I had my phone on black and white. So I would take the pictures all in black and white, and I would see the wall all in black and white, So it was kind of interesting and fun, and and you learn things, and it's a different kind of way of seeing the world. There's no color, so just there are different rules.
And, Roman, I've always found whenever I had to do, as a colorist, the most obvious reason for me to have to grade black and white is in a dream sequence or something like that. And I've always found that shot matching can be a nightmare in black and white. There is no hiding shot matching mistakes. Did you find yourself just working on that over and over again, because it's just completely, the color doesn't hide, there's no color to hide behind?
Yeah. Somewhat related, not exactly, but one thing is that first pass I did, just to balance things out, I did do that in color, just to sort of make sure nothing was completely out of whack. And Edu's right, it was hard to watch that way, because some of the lighting was kind of crazy in color. But I thought it was helpful just to make sure that something doesn't have a complete cast, so that the basis of the grade is sort of kind of neutral and evened out. So then when we pulled all the color out later down the line, you had a good foundation. And then to directly answer your question, I think when you suck the color out, you do become way more sensitive to the minutia of like contrast and brightness. So there were shots where, you know, you would do a pass and you might on a normal project, you'd be like, I'm done. But here you're just like constantly like refining little parts of that curve just to make sure from one shot to another, it feels perfect. So yeah, it did add a lot of work.
I am going to take that tip because I'm working in January. I've got a short film coming through that is that's delivering in black and white. And I'm going to do that. I'm going to do my first pass in color, just the balancing. And then that's fantastic. That's great advice. I'll give that a shot. All right, Jason, let's go ahead and play down the dancing hall scene.
They'll be there. They'll be there. You answer, I'm outraged. Do we have anywhere to sit?
So this is the dance hall thing, you know, like which is one of the biggest set pieces for us in the movie, and it was kind of a good opportunity for us to explore darkness, explore the world of Harlem in 1920s. Not only but with the music was playing, but also kind of it's a striking contrast to the beginning that we've seen. You know, like it was a whole different set of rules than what we've seen in the first scene. But also, you know, it's very particular in its use of grain. I think we pumped up the grain even more here. And it was a very important scene to see also the context, the Harlem kind of music and vibe, and you know, and scene, you know. But and also, you know, it's like 5 pages of dialogue here happening. The pivotal moment in the film to when we talk about the subject matter that is the most important and relevant of this movie, that is passion, you know. So it's kind of a very interesting combination of wanting a scene to be quite dark, but at the same time it's such an important dialogue, such an important moment, and it's, you know, 5 minutes of the film happened there, you know. So it's like you know, I know we spent a lot of time on that scene, you know, making it grading it, making it darker, exploring how much darker we could make it, you know.
The opposite direction of the opening scene, right? It's like darker, darker, darker.
Exactly. You know, like we like that, you know, of the film, you know, that the film is a roller coaster. It's white, it's black, it's anything and everything in between, you know. That's, you know, part of the joy of this movie, you know. And that's what it's also talking about, you know. So we're playing all those elements.
Yeah.
Roman, so Edu talked about the grain, and you know, watching the film, I was struck by the grain. The grain is beautiful throughout this film. It does vary throughout the film. You know, some scenes have more intense grain. That the dance hall scene, it's there, and it's not in a distracting kind of electronic way. It just feels very natural, and it feels like it belongs there. And I think by the time you get to the scene, you know, I think with the 4:3 aspect ratio, I often, when I watch movies that do that, I can never quite forget that I've got pillar boxes there, unless I'm drawn into the movie, and then you forget that you've got the black bars on the two sides. And so, you know, by the time you get into that scene, the black bars drop away. The grain is very nice and natural. Can you talk a little bit about the grain development in this process that the two of you went through, Roman, and kind of what kind of grain you used and how you went through that process.
Sure. We used live grain, which Edu knew from the start he wanted to use. I've used it a few times before, and I think it's
now for those who aren't familiar. Can you explain?
Yeah.
Can you explain what live grain is for those who aren't familiar?
Sure. Yeah, it's a third-party plugin that applies grain to an image, but the way it works, it's sort of like, first of all, they have scans of grain at different exposures, and then they measure your image in different sort of exposure ranges, and then apply the appropriate grain plate to each part of the image depending on its exposure. So it's highly intelligent. So I mean, it worked really nicely for us. And actually, it was I think grain stuff in general is always sort of like a development thing. You can't just like say, I want this, and then that works, forever. I feel like you find something that you like, and then you work with it, and then you sort of check in every once in a while to say, are we still happy with the grain? And I think we made many adjustments throughout our sessions where we sort of tweaked it, and then had to like apply our tweaks to different scenes that were, we sort of categorized the film and like grain treatments, and it was a process.
Yeah, I love live grain. I think it's beautiful. I also, as I said before, I'm going in a direction, especially for this movie, that I wanted this movie to have texture, to have a life, to not be crisp and sharp and clean. So live grain that I've used before on the way back, it just gave me that extra level of organicity and like kind of being alive, the image, being alive, that I kind of feel from the film days, I kind of miss from the film days, that I kind of also like, I just, the digital age has made the images crisper and have a bit less, kind of something going on, so I was like, from the beginning, I was like, I need film grain, and I like it, live grain. I think it's a beautiful tool that they've created, this grain that adapts to every frame, and it kind of changes as the frame changes, so it's like nothing else right now. I mean, it's the other softwares that are catching up and getting better and better. But I was blown away when I saw live grain demonstration, and that how much grain and the way the film grain specifically adapts to the exposure, it kind of affect the depth of an image. What happened when the digital age came, we all were like, all the film people were like, oh, it's so much flatter. And I didn't understand that concept until I saw what film grain does, and what live grain specifically does. It creates a three-dimensionality of the image that you don't get with the digital aspect. So it was important for us, and Rebecca, we were so strong about using live grain that it was impossible for the producers to say no. It was like, we don't want this movie to be seen without grain, And we also worked very hard to get texture. For us, it was very important, the texture. It's an element of filmmaking, of an image creating, that has been kind of being left apart. And I think it's very beautiful. Like, texture is something that connects us to the earth, to a screen, to an image, and that was kind of a lot of my work on this movie was, creating texture, creating, those kind of, to make it feel like something, like that you can almost sometimes touch it,
Mhm.
Well, when you think about film grain, I mean, what was it? It was you had multiple emulsion layers. Each of them had their own grain structure, and the grain was always a reaction to light. And so depending on how much light is on that film, you get this different feeling of grain. And I think, Edu, you've probably explained it and said it in a way that I haven't heard quite so clearly about the depth that effective grain can give you. Now, my question though is, because I've heard that Netflix always isn't happy with grain because it makes the file sizes bigger because the compression algorithms aren't as effective. And so when you think about, let's say, what you screened at the film festivals versus what you're seeing at home, are you happy with what you're seeing? I mean, I'm seeing it here, but I'm not seeing it the way the two of you are seeing it. And were you happy with the final result?
Yeah, what happened was also that we did all this testing. We shot the movie without the studio. Netflix was not part of it. So, and we finished the movie and it got screened at Sundance the way we wanted. Netflix bought the movie the way they saw it. So, so they bought a movie that it would not be accepted in the platform. It was their original content. This is 1.7K, and grain, but like they saw it, but what they are reacting is at the image itself, and the image is like, they like it, and they are like, so there was a couple of, hiccups on the path, but it was I mean they didn't change the grain. They were very happy, and actually they encouraged us to to keep the grain, and they were they wanted the film the way they saw it. They didn't want to change a single thing, so that was kind of beautiful, and it says a lot about them.
That is beautiful.
And it's kind of also like, there are some rules, but it's also, we can also break them if the story needs them, it needs them to be to break those rules, So it was kind of an interesting process. It went this way because of the specifics of not having a studio, and the producers and the director being very bold, and being very confident of what we were doing, So it was kind of it's kind of a joy, in a way, like that filmmakers and filmmakers are making the decisions, and not executives in a room somewhere. When you do a big film, sometimes there are decisions that you cannot understand, or you cannot grasp, or are not made from the story point of view, or the filmmaker's point of view. Is they're made elsewhere, in a room, in an office, very far away,
Well, I like to think that maybe what the two of you have done and Rebecca has done here is given more leeway to the filmmakers coming after you, who are working with these big streamers, who, the bottom line might say we need to get those images as small as possible, in terms of file sizes for delivery. But at the same time, you've given them something to appreciate about, the trade-off there, and what can happen if you do this intelligently and with craftsmanship. That no, it is worth retaining that detail and allowing it to happen when the filmmakers are doing it with intentions. So I'd like to think that you guys might have broken some doors down there.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope filmmakers at the end of the day can use the right tools to tell their story in their as their vision kind of lets them, or they want to, or the way they want it, instead of like some rules that that make everything a bit flatter. And again, it's like it's the 4 and 8K obsession that the film world is going, and my parents are rushing to a store to buy 8K TVs, like, or the, just because it says 4K, like, this thing shoots 4K. Does it look good? No, it's just a number. It's just a number. Looks good? No, or yes. It doesn't matter the number. It's just like let's call the things by by, you know, what they produce on us, not the number that we are of the sticker that it says, you know. You know, it's the wrong thing to go and buy a TV because it's 4K. You just need to fall in love with how that TV looks, not the 4K. If the TV
not the
next
4K-ishness of it. Yeah.
Exactly. You know, if the TV next door it says 2K but looks better, maybe go with the 2K. You know, I don't know. That's me. Maybe I'm maybe going old. You know, I'm thinking like an old guy. You know, far. You know, thinking of something else. But there's something about it that it's true. That is that it's good to have different ways of approaching the visuals of a movie. It's beautiful to have different tools, different elements, you know, that so not everything is the same. So films look different more and more instead of, you know, all the time the same, you know.
Yeah. Roman, get back to the take us back to the scene we just watched, and Jason, we're about to roll the next scene in a moment, which will be the Stoop scene. So you're dealing a lot when we get outside of the first 20 minutes or so of the film now, and then we get up to Harlem, and there are a lot of interiors. And I got to tell you, Edu, one of the things I absolutely noticed was your use of practical light, your use of natural light. It was absolutely brilliant, and frankly, I found it to be somewhat courageous. That there wasn't a lot of fill light put in there, right? There wasn't a lot of like weird sources of light coming in just to kind of, especially when you're dealing with dark-skinned actors where you're afraid of losing detail in their skin tones, right? And so, Roman, how was that transition where in the opening sequence you're like brighter, 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 and then as you get down on the film it's darker, 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 and managing those values now in the bottom 30 or 40% of the image? What was that experience like bouncing between those two styles?
I think you know, once we got out of that brighter part of the film, it felt more natural. More like how I'm used to grading. I think that obviously because of the subject matter and just, you know, keeping an eye on making sure to make sure everybody is visible despite the darkness that we're creating, these pools of darkness. I think that, you know, it necessitated a lot of windows, just to make sure that, you know, we can be dark and moody, but we still see what we need to see. So it was a lot of that. Again, maybe the inverse of what I told you before about making sure like you have a nice roll off in the shoulder for that bright scene. Same thing here. Like we want to get a nice dense black and like nice pools of darkness, but we never want it to feel like, you know, there's no detail there. And that's where live grain comes in as well, you know, getting texture into those shadows so that even if you have pools of darkness in the image, it never feels dead, is a big thing. And then
it's funny you put it that way, because I think you had, I do think you got there. I mean, I think you guys absolutely got there. I mean, where I noticed that, you know, there was black, right? I mean, there were stuff where the detail just falls out, but never where you wanted to look, right? Where you wanted to look, where you wanted the audience to focus their eyes on. It was dark, but it was never lifeless, and it was never not detailed, you know?
Well, and that's Edu, like the compositions and the framing. We also spent a lot of time framing shots, just like, I'm not saying, you know, move it like that. I'm saying like, it's just 3 pixels off, you know, just like making sure everything is perfect and creating like the focus in every shot to make sure we are directing the eye. And I think you're right. The idea that there is darkness, but you're not like falling into that void. You're always like looking where you're supposed to look, that was the work. And
At the end of the day, director of photography, your job is to direct the eyes of the audience, with light, with darkness, with composition, And yeah, I'm obsessed with reframing, in all my movies. I reframe every single thing, not just just sometimes you change taste, but sometimes it's just the storytelling, or sometimes just want to go bolder. And this one, because I had the 2:40 aspect ratio, but I was only using the center bit of it, I could reframe like crazy, so it was like a joy
Yeah.
for me to. Also, like, you shoot a movie in 23 days, it's like, all in a rush, and
Yeah.
and the movie, it's, the edits were not as precise, so you want more precision, you want it, you want to kind of, how is it, just maintain the director's vision, and she had a very precise way of understanding the film, and she was very, accurate in everything, and the film needed that accuracy, so we just kind of, reframe here and there, stabilize these, reframe, zoom in these, and resharp here, and all those kind of things that I think it's part of the post-production, joy of making films. It's just like, for me, it's just like how to make it as to make it look the best it can ever look. So I think composition is part of the game as well. And yeah, I've been told by many graders that I am the guy who reframes the most. And I always, I know, and I am, and I'm proud of it. I'm not hiding away. I'm just like, yeah, I wish we had done it better. Even shot is perfect, I don't reframe it. You know what I mean? I only reframe because I'm looking for even a higher level of perfection. I always look for something, and that's what we do.
Well, it's always amazing because a set is a very chaotic place, and it always amazes me that when you look at a film like this and what your end result was, that out of all that chaos came this very intentional, directed, piece of craftsmanship. It's almost kind of miraculous. It's like, how did we ever get there? But it talks, I guess, to everyone's experience and your background. And having done this before, it's not your first time at the rodeo. And so even though you're working with a first-time director, you're able to take her vision and execute on that. And to that end, I want to ask you, Edu, the Alexa on those dark images, as a colorist, if I were to get a look at what Roman saw, and maybe Roman, you could also speak to this, would I see an image substantially different in those dark scenes than maybe I would have seen in the tea room scene in terms of exposure levels?
Oh, yeah. I mean, absolutely. I mean, we, obviously everything was going in that direction already, but we always kept it, to a sensible level, like it will never go, super in one direction or the other crazily, try to respect, the image and the sensor, as much as I can. When I know where but still keep it in the direction I really want to go,
So your comfort level, I mean, is your comfort level with those dark scenes because you have a comfort level with that camera and that sensor and you've shot it with it before, and you kind of know how much light you can take away before you've taken too much light away?
Exactly. Yeah. It's also, like knowing the camera, also, your experience, your taste, the directors, and also, obviously the amazing work of Zach Sainz, the DIT, is also, also help, so everything. And obviously then you go to the post-production, and, someone like Roman obviously elevates it all, so it's different steps, going in the same direction, and every little step helps, on the way.
So let's run one more clip, and then we've got a question from the audience that I'll work into that clip after we viewed it, which is the Stoop Scene.
This is one of my favorite scenes in the movie because, well, I mean, it talks about all the important subjects of the movie and all the important things that the movie talks about. It talks about faith, about fate, about morals, about friendship, about individualism, obviously about racism, passing, and also about death. And I love the way the whole scene is crafted and even the way they are dressed, one in white, one in black, and they are kind of opposite sides of the same coin, and I love, and we reframe this just to be perfectly in sync, one on top of each other, so you kind of feel like one could be the other one in a way, and they kind of match, they superimpose almost. There's something like that. And this last shot of the film, of the scene, is one of my favorites, and that's where you see the low monomorphics at its best, and how,
Yeah, and what you did on those highlights there in the sky and then them below that and the way the trees are framed, it's a beautiful, beautiful shot. It really is an astonishing shot. But this also, I think if you leave that frame up, Jason, for a moment, because I think the frame kind of harkens back to some of the concepts we've been talking about, where we've got, like in the trees, there's the blacks are going black, and then we've got like the highlights are blown out, but there's the detail where you want it matters, right? And maybe if you guys might want to talk a little bit about, maybe Roman, about getting there and walking that fine line and how you kind of achieve that. You're muted.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think with many of these kind of shots, it's something that you feel on watching it a couple of times. So like, getting that density in those trees on the right there, and then letting the top sort of blow out. It's just something that like every pass we would be like, oh, let's put a window here. Let's give that some guts, so we have something to counterweight the rest of the shot.
And the diffusion and the blown out highlights, is that something you did in post, or was that something you captured on the lens during the shoot?
Not on this shot. This is in camera diffusion.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's why it looks so good.
Yeah.
This is like the lenses, like they go so soft on the sides and high on the top and bottom on the sides.
And look at the bottom. That's so beautiful.
Yeah. We actually, I think we actually end up sharpening her a tiny bit because it could be red, and the big screen, it was a bit soft,
Right.
But yeah, I mean, these are the characteristics of the lenses, and that's what we like about them, and well, sometimes we encounter a lot of troubles with them, it comes with a price, obviously, but but I do love that framing and what it means, what it says about them. Even some people even like interpret the way the trees are dark in one side and bright on the other in kind of all different ways, so it's nice when an image kind of throws the imagination of people
Right.
to a place that you never even thought about it.
And then was there a kind of overall plan that exteriors would naturally kind of feel like this, where you had this extreme dynamic range, but then interiors were much more, in the opening, they're in one end of the spectrum, and then when you're in the Harlem, they're at the other end of the spectrum. Was that, and the exteriors would kind of walk the line between the two. Was that the plan? Was that the game plan from the start? Or is that kind of something that evolved as the two of you worked together?
I don't know, Edu. I think a lot of that we sort of found as it went along. I'm thinking about.
Yeah, yes and no. I think Rebecca was very, very clear of the levels of she wanted. And there's a scene in the middle of the film that is kind of the Indian summer. So it kind of
Yes,
comes back to the beginning.
that's what I was thinking of.
You know, and also like the ending, you know, there's just snow in the final scene, and it's also to remind us of the beginning, you know. And everything in between is a roller coaster, you know, like life itself and race itself, you know. It's like, you know, you know, there are different variations, different levels of, like, you know, we try to keep a similar level of contrast, you know. So it was not like, you know, we'll use a very soft blacks in one, and then, like, you know, the blacks, we try to keep them in a very similar place, I would say, you know. And but the luminosity of it all will, you know, keep changing, you know. Yeah, and every scene its own world, and that's also how I liked it, you know. I like that, you know, that it's not one thing, you know. I sometimes, and I've done it before, that that the movie is one tone, one kind of setup, you know. But this one was not the case, you know, and I thought, and I actually enjoyed that it was not like that. I thought that the variations were kind of rich and kind of told us different things, and, you know, also not having one color, you cannot make a scene, you know, the dark scene or the dusk scenes are not that different from, you know, the day scenes if you don't change a lot the luminosity, you know. It's like, so it's an interesting, you know. For example, yeah, I mean, you know, dusk scenes, I do miss the dusk scenes, you know, when you should be black and white, you know. But it is what it is. They don't look as good as normally, you know, they do, you know. So it's so it's like you play with the tools you have, and you make the most of what you have, you know, and that's part of the joy of filmmaking.
Yeah.
Roman, when you were grading some, particularly like the Stoop scene and the Indian summer scene, both gorgeous and both harken back to that opening kind of look. I mean, were you pulling that reference from the open up as you were grading those, just to kind of remind you, like, we want to kind of echo back to this, or were you just kind of grading them on their own?
Yeah, I didn't refer to the opening again. That was kind of like, it's very much its own little world. The Stoop scene, actually, what was interesting about that is there was a lot of light there that we were trying to control, and give that mood that conversation had, into that grade. But then the Indian summer scene, that also, it was just, that was sort of like supposed to punctuate some of the darkness that we had been in around that part of the film. You know, we had a lot of these interiors, a lot of the darker, denser, you know, pools of darkness sort of shots, and then this was supposed to kind of like be a palette refresher, kind of like a Indian summer is. It's a treat, right? And these women are outside enjoying like this unexpected beautiful weather, and your eyes are kind of like enjoying it as well. And then when Claire gets up and does the stretch, and the light is sort of flaring in her hair and into the lens. Wow. Yeah. So, and then that sets you up for the dramatic end, you know. That was a good thing. But to answer your question, no, that was a very sort of like, that scene was its own thing. The Stoop scene was its own thing. We didn't really refer back to the beginning.
Interesting. Now, we have a question from the audience, and I'm trying to decide how to frame this question. And I guess I could ask you, what LUT did you use? Which seems to be what, I kind of live in a teaching training world, and there's this preoccupation with lookup tables, and the need, and everyone always wants to know what LUT you used. And so was there a particular lookup table that you guys at least maybe even started with, either maybe that started on set, maybe there was something that was loaded up into the camera, or a particular transform that was being used that made it from set to grading suite? Was there anything that kind of carried over in order to
we did
from the set into grading?
Yeah, we did some testing, and we created some lights early on the process with Harbor, and and we used I think we had 2 or 3 LUTs that we mainly used throughout the film, but I just also wanted to make sure that that whatever we had on the day, on the rushes or on the camera, it could also be translated to the grading suite. It was important for me that it was like, okay, the same image, it looks exactly the same everywhere you look at, until it gets to the grading suite. It was because I've been on this process, or this before, where you do a lot on the set, but then you have to start from scratch when you start grading, which is a nightmare. At least I want to be where I was. That's a good starting point, better than from nowhere, from nothing. So it was. We obviously changed a lot of things. We made it better, but there was some scenes that were pretty good, that they came from the rushes in a very good place. And that's where we continue. So,
And before I get to you, Roman, Edu, the notion of creating your LUTs in conjunction with Harbor. So, it's not like you're just pulling some transform that you found someplace, or or something that maybe ships with the Alexa. You guys did some tests, and did you do like on-set grading that then generated those lookup tables and that type of thing? Can you talk a little bit about that LUT development?
We did a couple of tests, that were like, it was a combination of camera lenses test, and then makeup and so on. And every time we'll go to Harbor and see them on the big screen and start kind of evolving a lot, that, it kept evolving and kept changing as we got along, and as we were learning other stuff. And it's a process, and it's like, let's push it more this way, and and so it was evolving until you finally see the movie in a theater full of people. It's always evolving. So so it was so we had a lot. We evolved on testing, and the DAT had it, and we were doing on-set grading as we were shooting, and then we'll see the once or twice we saw it in the big screen during the shoot, and then obviously at the end with the whole grading. That's also when we saw it. And we changed.
So Roman, did those developed lookup tables, did those make it to you, and how did they make it to you? Was there like did you get like, your camera reports, and they described what they had used on set for a particular shot, and you were working off of those? Or was there some other pipeline in place that allowed you to connect the shots from on set to grading?
Right. So because we developed the LUT, I had all the pieces available to me. Like, what I mean by that is the components that went into creating that LUT that Edu shot with. So when we got the raw footage back, I have basically all of those little components that created the show LUT that Edu developed during testing, of like how much contrast and what kind of film curve and stuff like that. Those are all components that I can now choose to leave as they are, or like dial them up, or like modify them. So that's one thing. And then any CDL adjustments that the DIT did, also make their way to me. So
Oh, so
I
you got a
have that as a
CDL
starting
back
point.
from on set. Oh,
Yeah.
nice. Okay.
So I have the CDL from the DIT. I have the components that create the LUT. So our starting point is what Edu saw in dailies. And now we can decide, do we want to amp up the contrast a bit? Okay, let me go into that parameter and then just, you know, give that a nudge. So yeah, it's a great process, because that way all of those decisions that went into creating the LUT are not locked away into some like show LUT that I have no access to. It's all of the components are there for me to say, like, okay, do we like this? Do we want to modify it? Do we trash it all together? So it's a great
So it sounds to me,
thing.
and you don't have to explicitly answer this if you don't want to, but
Yeah.
I'm going to ask because I'm curious, which is, so it sounds like almost like you're using either a piece of grading software or maybe some Lut development software where you're grading it up, and then during the testing, and then Edu's there and he's like, yeah, I like that, print that, and then they print it by exporting out the Lut, and then when it comes
Exactly.
back and you get the CDL, you essentially, it's almost like you've got the original grade that you exported out to
Exactly.
create the Lut. Okay. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And that's, you know, and so that's why I always get, I sometimes smirk a little bit when someone asks, well, what Lut did you use on that show? It's like, well, you know, yeah, there was a Lut used, but it's not like some packaged thing you can buy at, you know, some online store, download from some website. You know, it's
So
a
basically
custom developed thing.
The show LUT creation process is grading. You're there and you're looking at all the things that Edu shot today, and you're making decisions that translate to all of the shots in a pleasing way. You can't say this shot is beautiful, but it makes all these other shots look terrible. You want to find that middle ground where everything looks good, and Edu feels confident he wants to shoot that way, and then we export that as a LUT. So the show LUT that Edu shot with is it's a concatenated package of, you know, different pieces.
Exactly.
So now let's go ahead and let's take a look at the last clip we have on the line here, which is the dream sequence, which is always fun to talk about, dream sequences.
Yeah, I mean, this is one a very different scene. You know, it's actually, you know, she's like falling asleep, but it's not dream. It's like kind of like a medicational moment, you know, and it's kind of has this dreamy feeling, this dreamy kind of aspect to it, and it's so different from the from all the other parts that are more restrained in the movie. This is kind of crazier compositions, play with focus and play with tonalities, and and the darkness also is more apparent, and here we are actually also, there's this kind of feeling that we kind of lose the sense of time, and something we play with. It was on the script, and we play with the grade as well, that feeling that, you know, you don't know if it has passed, you know, just a few hours, it has been a small nap, or it's just, you know, a few days or even months, you know? And it's kind of that kind of, I like how it floats between that, and you are, it's lost in a time frame, you know. And I think what Roman did here with the grade is also, you know, different, and every time I see that, I like it, you know. It has that kind of weirdness, and you know, and the whites are almost exploding. And
as a colorist, I sometimes, when I hit a dream sequence, I sometimes, like, my blood pressure rises a little bit, because it's like, well, show me something interesting, right? Like, sometimes the filmmaker doesn't know what they want out of the dream sequence, and I'm not quite sure where to go with a dream sequence. Do you feel like you had a good idea when you hit that? of where you wanted to go with it by the time you got to it?
Well, I know exactly what you mean, and thankfully that was not the case here, because it wasn't like we were looking for a gimmick to apply, like some sort of, I don't mean that in a negative way, but we weren't looking to apply like some sort of treatment to make it feel like dreamy. All of that was already done in the photography.
Yeah.
So what was really fun was this was an opportunity to play with, like, I think it speaks to that idea of being out of time and out of place. Like we go from a really flary shot to a really densely dark frame, and like just playing with that flow was a lot of fun. But as far as like feeling pressure to come up with like an idea of how to convey this, that it was very natural. I felt like the footage was speaking, and then we just made decisions to enhance a moment, or to, like, you know, do we have this beautiful flare, but do we like create like a really dark part of the frame as well, or do we just like let this burn out a little bit? And that was the fun part. I really liked that sequence.
Yeah, so it becomes very experimental and seeing,
Yes.
all right, I've got this great image in front of me. What happens if? And then you do like 5 variations, and you just kind of, you know, you're just sitting there on the control surface, bouncing around and kind of looking and seeing what happens. You're like, oh, that's cool. And then you start marrying stuff together. So Edu, when you hit this part of the script, what did you, when you went in to shoot this scene, what was your approach in order to create kind of the dream state separate from the rest of the film?
Yeah, it was interesting. You know, it was one of those days that you are behind and running. Everything is going, not according to plan. And it was like, you know what, we have an hour, or we had very short time to shoot that scene. And then I was like, you know what, give me the camera, put a diopter on, and let's go crazy. And we had been so constrained and restricted for so long, and the movie so compressed, and the aspect ratio and the accuracy is one, that it was suddenly, it's like, let's go crazy. And we just went creative, and we just shot like a little bit music video style in a way, just grab the camera and shoot a lot of painterly poetic images, and and it's like, this is sometimes some of my favorite times on set, is like when you are a camera and the actor and the director, and you're just figuring it out, and just do this test, do it again, and like, okay, and now focus here, and then give me another diopter, just shallower. Oh, we don't have focus. Okay, don't have it soft, and then when she drinks, it's like, it's a diopter that cannot cannot get sharp. It's like soft, and as I and I am approaching, and I find focus, basically, and things like that. We did a few, and it was quite playful and quite on the spot. We had the concept, but it's also just the time crunch, and the days before kind of emphasize that feeling of us having to just take some pills and go elsewhere, and that's what we did. And the same as the actor, So it's like, it was kind of an interesting process, and it came out, kind of exactly like we talked about and we thought beforehand. And to be honest, we probably didn't know exactly how we were gonna do it on the day. We knew we were, we had some ideas, but there were thoughts, there were concepts. And then you go on the day and you just go with crazy, go with wild, and that's what comes out. That's kind of fascinating and interesting, and also it's one of the reasons why I love filmmaking.
Yeah. So to wrap up our conversation tonight, and thank you both very much for your time and for your willingness to talk openly about this. Roman, I'll start with you. And then Edu, I'll ask you a similar question, which is, when you think about what the process of how how long was the grade? How much time did you spend on the grade?
It's actually hard to say because this pandemic finishing it was very fractured. It's not that standard idea of like we have a week or 2 weeks or whatever, and like you start and end and it's a contiguous amount of time. This was very fragmented, so it lasted quite a while. I think I don't even want to venture to say like what the day count was, but it was over a few weeks of time, not contiguous.
And so when you think about the process you went through this film, all the things we talked about that make this particular film very unique and very interesting to work on, when you think through that, is there something that when you look back on it or when you move forward now that you say, yeah, there were things I tried that I wish had worked out that didn't? Or was there something that you tried that surprised you and that you're like, yeah, I'm putting this in my toolkit and I'm gonna walk forward with this? Do you have any of those moments in there?
This is the part you're going to have to cut out, right? Me thinking about it. No.
That's a tough question, I admit.
No, I don't think so. I think that honestly, the grading on this film was very fundamental. Like it's like about the fundamentals, about nailing the contrast and the brightness, and then really shaping every frame with windows and keys. I mean, there are no gimmicks. Sorry about that. There are no gimmicks here. Okay. It's just about like really grinding it out and making passes and polishing. I think something that I can take away from this film as a learning experience, and this is something that I feel I can take away from many films, is like that what we talked about with that first scene and about like that brightness. Like the first time we were pushing that boundary of brightness, I had sort of this feeling like I want to bring it back, and now I can't imagine it any other way. And that's something that as a colorist I'm like very intent on like marking for myself, is those times when you're like, you want to restrain yourself, but like really pushing through is the right thing for the piece. And just like figuring out when those times are that you want to like hold back and like, hold on, man, when this happened before, it really worked out well. You got to just like, you got to think about the benefits here and just sit on it. Sometimes like grading is a very reactionary thing, and you get used to one thing, and sometimes like when you change it, it doesn't look right to you. And sometimes you just need to live with it and see how it feels in like a day. So those are the things I think,
yeah, I mean, it's a brilliant point. I think when I hear that answer, the thing that you evoke in me is the notion of allowing yourself to go outside your comfort zone and just don't say no. Like trust, take a moment and trust the client, trust your DP. Right, trust to do, right? Right, exactly. 2 words, trust to do, right?
That's right.
So Edu, kind of reframing the question for you as you look at this film and the opportunity presented in front of you, was there anything in particular, either you're like, yeah, I wish this had worked and it didn't really, or something where you're like, no, I can't believe this happened and I'm going to walk away with this and it's going to inform me in the future?
I mean, it's a lot of things. I think, first there is the proud of the film, like being proud of the work we've done, and it's very similar. The film it resulted in the film that Rebecca talked to me about. the first time we talked. She wanted to do the film like this, and the things that we've achieved are pretty remarkable, because it doesn't happen that often that you do exactly the film you wanted to do. So that's already an achievement and something to talk home about. But also it's like I also find excitement in the boldness. I find excitement on taking risks, and I have to say that the most proud I've been of the projects I've done is when I took risks, when I took a gamble, when I didn't play it safe, and I was struggling to sleep at night and losing hair on the way. Look, I've lost a lot of hair because it's a bit like that. I've taken a lot of risks. I've taken but this is what has made me happier of the results, and I keep reminding myself that that's also the way not to grow old, like to stay young and passionate about what I do and what I like, and following my instincts, following reacting to the director's vision. It's always a great thing to be aware and to take home. And I also the other thing I take home, a film is never perfect. It's never, you always do, like, you don't finish grading. They make you stop doing it. Like, it's always a bit like that.
Film is never done; it's just abandoned.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But I take from home, how important it is to work with people you like, how important it is to have people on your side that understand your vision, that support you, and I think, what, from the camera department, the camera rental, finding the lenses, which were not easy, but also like the crew, every single person on the crew, made this film better. And Harbour and Roman did an amazing job, and you just want to be with nice people that make you better, and that that understand you, that listen, and that and they elevate your work, and that's part of filmmaking and team. Filmmaking is a team, and every element counts, and it's not one thing. It's like costume affects the way Roman is grading, of course, like it's like every single thing is intertwined, and that's part of the charm and the beauty of filmmaking. We're not doing a piece of work in front of a painting on our own. It's a lot of people involved, and you want to be with the right people, with nice, hardworking, creative people that can make it better every single day, and every single scene, so I take
Well,
that.
thank you. It's a great note to wrap up on. I can tell you, Edu, I've never met you before, but and Roman, we've never met before, but the energy between the two, the energy that both of you bring to it, I definitely felt it here in our discussion today. And I want to congratulate you both on just a wonderful piece of work, and the time and the energy, and the craftsmanship that both of you have brought to the film. I think it's on the screen, it's there. And so I want to thank you very much for coming out here, talking about it so freely and so openly as well. And I think at this point, I'm going to toss this to Josh Apter. So, he'll take us the rest of the way. Thanks, Josh.
Yeah, thank you. And really, that was just an amazing conversation and great clips. I wanted to see the movie before, so I definitely will go and see it now. And I really just can't thank you enough for giving your time and your energy. I'm not sure if you guys have seen the film First Cow, but it's not the same at all in any way, except for that I was convinced that they had shot it on 16mm film and flashed it and crumpled it up, and found out that they shot it on digital and worked incredibly hard to make it look like it was 16 and crumpled up. And so an amazing job that you guys have done to give it such a specific and appropriate look. Really great work. So thanks again, everybody. And
Thank you so
I'm going
much.
to thank our sponsors again, AJA, OWC, ACE, and Zeiss, Janet and Jason, Patrick, Edu, Roman. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll be back again in a few weeks with another event, as yet unnamed, but I'm sure it will be exciting. They never tell me anything around here. And we will see you next time at Sight, Sound, and Story. Have a great night.
Thank you
Thank
very
you so
much.
much. I appreciate it.